Yes, that lead up to Next Generation has been a very violent affair, almost like entering a football match in England. But we leave all that at the door, very much like historical accuracy when it comes to Assassin's Creed title, and Valhalla is no exception. But it's a game, and like a game, it's here to entertain, not teach, which is a good job. But what we are here for is next generation titles, and as we move into that all-important Christmas period, we just want to know what will we be playing on our new generation of consoles and PC, and just how much better they're going to be than the last generation.
If this swine is your prize, come and get him!
Just to summarise some main points of the video, it will be discussing titles that will be coming out before the end of 2020, and it will be titles that will either have a fully fledged next generation version, a patch, or a combination thereof that might come a little later, and I'll discuss that on each and individual video. These will be all next gen versions, including the Series S and the PC, and I'll be covering each aspect of what you can expect before the year's out, and just what has been announced about those versions, and what I surmise will actually deliver, even if it's not been officially announced yet. Well, let's kick off with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a title that has only recently been announced that will be supporting full 4K and 60 FPS on the Series X. Shock horror, that came out of nowhere, I'm sure you'll agree. So I'm here to confirm that the PS5 will also be supporting 60 FPS. It's not been officially announced, and no one's told me this from Ubisoft, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be the case. So both next-gen versions will offer a 4K and 60 FPS option, likely both of them dynamic, maybe Series X is going to be static. It will be a free upgrade across all formats, which obviously gives you 4K 60. There'll be snow deformation via tessellation, which we can see in the latest trailers, improved volumetric clouds, increased animations due to that improved CPU, delivering more frames within the same time. It'll obviously have lower input latency, a general weakness of the AC games by and large. Having an actual resolution and a temporal resolution increase will obviously improve everything else, from the image quality, from the textures themselves, the sampling, the anisotropic filtering, alpha buffers, particles, and they've even included a fire propagation system now. Which, this is still a current generation engine and title, but it's likely been improved to DirectX 12. And this will be a core benefit. It might even be using Vulkan, but the overall structure of the title means that it needs it, because one of the struggles it had on consoles and PC is it really struggled to utilize the GPU at times, and a lot of that came from the streaming issues in terms of, as you can see here from the PC version, streaming in assets and textures. As beautiful as they were, lots of things popped in. It caused the frame rate to drop well into the 30s at certain points. And a DirectX 11 version with single-threaded cores on the APIs, or at least not utilizing those multi-cores and getting the GPU to do more work itself, is where they will really, or should have, concentrated their time for the past 2 years. And I'll be surprised if they haven't. And that also means that it will improve the performance, but those SSDs in these consoles also means that it could actually see a significant improvement over the PC version, even at that 60 FPS target. So I do fully expect that this will be close to as locked 60 as you can possibly get on an Assassin's Creed title, but don't expect it to be fully locked, because we don't even get a fully locked 30 FPS on the current gen. So keep your expectations in check, but I do think that we might see less stuttering and more consistent performance, because the overall engine looks like an improvement and a refinement of the current gen, rather than a huge leap forward, which we saw with Assassin's Creed Unity, which still to this day can struggle at certain points, even on decent PC specs that weren't even available back in the day, but it still looked good at many points if it's starting to show its age in certain others.
Next time, do that before he starts screaming.
The much richer textures, the brighter colour tones, and the density of the world is quite apparent and obvious once you go from that version to this, but it's still the same Assassin's Creed title at heart. It also now delivers a dismemberment system and more impact from that combat, but likely this is a core engine increase across all formats and nothing specific to next generation. Despite the general clunky animations and weak story, the AC games are one of the most grandiose and impressive multi-platform titles each and every year they launch, and certainly from Ubisoft. The fact that this year they'll also deliver a 4K 60 on the Series X and PS5, and most likely a 1080 60 on the Series S, will be a big change for many long-time Assassin's Creed players. Means that very close to that November 10th launch, the patch will be available for all your console formats. Is it going to be the PS5, the Series X, or maybe even the Series S? Obviously, PC players can just play the one they download from scratch. Assassin's Creed will be a title that I'll be very interested in covering in depth what the previous version, the new version, actually looks and runs like, what's been sacrificed, what's been added, and that'll be true for many titles here I'm covering, such as Dirt 5, which I actually have already covered in my early PC preview build, that has an extended or an improved internal Codemasters Evo engine that's been ramped up for visual quality, texture details, and those vital frame times in racing games. The PS5 and the Series X will offer 120 FPS modes via the free next-gen updates, again, that will come on the Xbox One or PS4 versions. No split purchase required. Like all the games on this list so far, you just literally buy the current version and play the next-gen one once it's ready, and it will likely be a patch just to open up those engine options that are already there to the newer hardware. This means you'll get 8 millisecond frame times, which is an exceptionally low point in terms of console racing games, and will likely mean an aggressive 4K 1440p target on both, or some of the cutbacks from the full fat ultra settings the 4K 60 mode will deliver. It's got volumetric lights, dynamic weather, snow racing, procedural generation of terrain, and near instant loading from those SSDs means you will only ever be a few seconds from your next race and a few milliseconds from victory. Expect the Series S to have a possible 1080 120 FPS mode, but it might just stick to 60 because it might be a stretch too far. But certainly it'll have a 1440p dynamic 60 mode as a worst case scenario, and that still is a welcome boost over what we generally got on many other titles in this current generation, aside those big titles from both Sony and Microsoft. Another title that's around a year late now from Ubisoft is Watch Dogs Legion, which again will have a free upgrade for both current gen consoles, and that means that it'll offer a 4K 60 mode on consoles and ray trace reflections, which the PC version also supports. Now, Xbox have come out and said that it will support the ray trace reflections in DXR. Obviously, the PS5 version will also support it because they both support hardware-based ray tracing, so you'll have extra effects, higher resolution, and smoother frame rates and input times. Loading should also be fastest on console due to those SSDs and relevant APIs associated to them, and that means entire fast loading and GPU page streaming will be available on both of the consoles. Obviously, if you're looking to be sporting an RTX card or the new RDNA 2 cards from AMD this year, then you can also have ray tracing on those, but the Nvidia cards have that exclusive level of DLSS, which will obviously improve performance at the sacrifice of reconstructing the image. But even on PC's best, you need all the help you can get when ray tracing is on the cards. The biggest impact both in headline grabbing boosts and reductions in performance though will be those ray traced reflections. Series X, PS5 and PC will obviously sacrifice resolution and frame rate likely to enable shiny reflections of your next gen grins. Whether or not this still sticks to a 60 FPS mode and drops the resolution down to 1080, or whether they just obviously cut back on the resolution quality of those ray trace reflections and the BVH objects, then that all depends on what they deliver. But looking at the Nvidia released video here, it does look good, it does look shiny, so I'm sure if you are interested in getting the most out of your hardware, Watch Dogs Legions will allow you to see at least ray tracing for the very first time on console. Bungie's long-standing epic multiplayer Destiny 2 will also receive free upgrade patches for both generations of consoles. This means if you buy the PS4 version, you'll get access to the PS5 version for free, and the same for the Xbox Series X will come from the Xbox One or the Xbox One X version that you might buy. This means that you can also play with your friends on those lower formats, but you'll get 4K 60 FPS and other visual treats and boosts over that 1080 or 4K 30 that console players have become accustomed to, and this is largely down to that increase in CPU. And like I mentioned before, it's largely down to the fact that the frequency on the individual core is much higher and the IPC count is, therefore it's easier to achieve 60 when you haven't got to thread all your work across all those cores. Outside of this boost, there's probably not a lot to expect other than maybe better effects and textures, but other than this, the DLC is trying to push cross-generation and cross-platform play for next year. So PlayStation players can take on Xbox players in whatever version of console they may be playing, which could be confusing when you're saying you're playing on the PlayStation or Xbox, because God knows which one that's going to be in about a year's time. The free next-gen patches continue with Gearbox's Borderlands 3 receiving a 60 FPS and 4K upgrade to the current gen versions for free across a patch, and this will also deliver a split-screen vertical option, but this will actually hit all versions and come in as part of the same patch. So again, this is also likely to be a patch just to open up the engine options to the newer hardware via the APIs and not a full downloadable brand spanking new game. This means that all your saves, DLC and everything else will just carry straight over to the new generation of consoles, making it seamless but damn smoother. Marvel's Avengers from Crystal Dynamics is another one that's getting a 4K 30 option and then a 4K 60 dynamic option for those that need the faster refresh times. Expect this to be much closer to an actual 60 FPS target than we saw when I covered on the current gen versions back with my analysis. And the final one that I'll cover before I go to a specific point about Xbox is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. This one is, as you would expect from Activision, a strange one because it doesn't actually offer you a free upgrade, and it brings into perspective why I always mention about digital options being limited. Just to understand how simple it all is, they've even thrown together an FAQ on their website to explain this simple transaction of buying a game and where you can play it. Obviously this means that you can buy the PS4 digital version and play it on the PS5. If you buy the disc version, you can play that in your PS5, but you have to pay an upgrade fee to be able to transfer to that, likely £10. You can play both versions on the disc with the new versions in backwards compatibility mode. That's really nice of them. Or you can buy the cross-gen bundle and then use that across all versions. There is no option on the Xbox at all to use the disc version to upgrade to the Series X or the Series S version at all. You have to buy digital or you have to buy it again in a physical disc version. Now you can buy the Series X disc version and that will play on the older versions. That's the way you get around it. So yeah, dead simple, really easy to understand, and yeah, love it. Activision really making it nice and simple to everyone to buy a game and play it on their new console if they upgrade. Great stuff. Obviously the other way around is you can't play the PS5 version on the PS4 because they're not compatible because they're brand new binaries, as I covered in my development video a few months back. Bit of a poor show, bit of a cack-handed way of doing it, but then again it's Activision, so I'm not really that surprised. There is a much better way to handle this. Control is another one that does exactly the same thing. You have to buy the next gen version. There's no free upgrade at all. So again, these two companies, they're not really doing themselves any favours in this point, because just force the player to buy the game on one version and allow you to play it across both. Everyone else by and large is doing it, so they just look like the odd ones out by not doing it, and that really isn't a great look. But hopefully it'll be a very limited situation that this won't continue for long. Moving into a small but focused Xbox section here, there is actually going to be quite a few Xbox updates coming. Whether again they're all patches, they're all brand spanking new executables is not known yet, but I'm sure there might be a combination thereof. Sea of Thieves will see an update patch that will offer 60 FPS and 4K modes for all players that have the current game at the moment. And the same thing with Gears Tactics, which is a brand spanking new game not yet launched on consoles but has already launched on PC. This will now hit Series X and Series S, and this means that it'll have VRS on there as well, which is the first time we've seen that on consoles, which gives us around 30% performance based on statistics from Microsoft themselves. And this means that you'll get the 4K 60 FPS mode that PC runs at the best quality settings, hopefully. And again, that's a brand spanking new game, so that's not a free upgrade. You actually have to buy it because it's not available on consoles just yet. Forza Horizon 4 will also receive a 4K 60 update and some other tweaks to the visual quality closer in line with the top-end PC version. And then you'll get Gears 5, the fully fledged update that has loads of options added in to take advantage of the new Series X and push it beyond the current highest on PC. 50% higher particle counts, screen space contact shadow, screen space global illumination, 4K 60 FPS cinematics, better textures and isotropic filtering, and other areas including depth of field, fog, and all other effects. It'll be ramped up, and more importantly, it'll have a 120 FPS mode in the multiplayer, both on the Series X and the Series S, likely 1080p dynamic 4K between the two versions. But at the moment, 120 FPS and 60 FPS options on both these versions will be great, and a welcome boost if you own this already on consoles, or more likely, if you've got Game Pass, which a lot of these titles will be pushing forward, because that's the whole point of Microsoft's next-gen plans, and this really adds to the caveat of there's so much more to see. The last exclusive patch for Xbox is Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is actually coming out on all versions. It's a cross-gen title that's hitting in November on PC, PS4 and Xbox. But Xbox have obviously bought an exclusive patch from Sega to bolster their lineup for the Christmas period. It'll likely land on PS5, the same upgrade in January, but for now the Xbox One gets 4K 60 FPS to improve the quality and the performance. And it's as crazy and satirical as anything you can expect from Japan, and a Sega game has to be played at 60 FPS because that's how they were always intended, and I fully and wholeheartedly recommend it.
Need some seasoning. Order up. Your heart's mine.
Obviously, I've not touched on direct Sony PS5 titles here because we're about to see what those all look like and what the dates are in a few coming days with a PS5 updated reveal, and possibly those prices will finally land. So I'll be covering that and that whole show next week, so check back on that one. And that's it. That's every single worthwhile upgrade patch available for the next generation of consoles. Obviously, I'm completely joking. The most important one of all is here. Yes, it's Cyberpunk 2077.
Well, who do we have here?
Unsurprisingly, CD Projekt Red have already knocked it out of the park this generation with The Witcher 3. Cyberpunk 2077 really looks like they're about to do exactly the same thing all over again. It really is tantalizingly beautiful. It was shown at the Nvidia RTX 3000 series launch. It's got ray trace goodness. It's got visual quality that just seems unbelievable. It's going to be running on anything like an Xbox One. So I really am intrigued to see what it does, but the next gen version is going to have everything: ray trace lighting, reflections, shadows, everything you can imagine is going to be ramped up to maximum here. Now, the upgrades are split. There is going to be two upgrades. They're both free, so if you buy it on any version you get these free. So at launch there will be an upgraded, this is likely going to be a patch where it will boost the features and the options in the game to boost the frame rates up to 60 FPS, boost the quality of the resolution up to 4K, boost the effect settings, the textures, the details, the particle effects, the lighting. All those areas will be ramped up on both the Series X and the PS5, and likely better on the Series S as well. But there'll be no ray trace reflections or anything else along those lines that will be on the RTX cards, and they might actually not even hit the AMD cards. It might be exclusive to RTX, we don't know yet. But then later next year there will be a full upgrade version that will take advantage of the Series S and the PS5, and they will contain more effects, more features, and ray tracing reflections will be added in, and maybe, just maybe, even more, because they've already announced that they're bringing ray traced goodness and 60 FPS to PS5 and the Series X yet on The Witcher 3. So CD Projekt Red are yet again smashing it out of the park. I really commend them for the work they're putting in. They're really pushing this title hard. It's going to land finally at the end of this year, and we can all get stuck into this. I'll be covering this in detail. Hopefully you can check back more on that, but I really am looking forward to seeing just how it runs on the PC right down to the Xbox One and everywhere in between. But those next gen patches that will be there day one means we'll get even more out of these brand spanking new consoles. Thank you CD Projekt Red, and thank you Cyberpunk 2077. Anyway, that's the whole video come to a close. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it useful, and you can revert back to it at launch to skip through to the parts you need using the link below, and obviously the sections at the bottom of the screen to jump to the part of the game you want. And obviously if you are buying Call of Duty, the same as I am, we've got that extra game to enjoy and look forward to, where we can all collaborate and try and work out which version to buy and how the hell we play it. Anyway, you guys and girls, take care. Remember, I'm completely self-funded and independent, and I do this as a part-time thing. I'm full-time working, so I don't do this as a full-time thing. It's something on the side. So hopefully if you like what I do, you can really like by subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell, sharing where appropriate, and if you can, even give me a few pounds or pence on the Patreon link below. I'll catch you guys and girls very soon in Next Gen Land, and of course, on the next one.
That's the only way.